We move on to the next session now. For years now, organizations have been towing the waters of moving to cloud. I think lately, more or less, the decision is made to move to clouds. But as they have gone ahead, they have progressively gone in islands, and there have been little cloud setups done, which have led to a situation called as the multi-cloud setup. And the fact is that this distributed cloud. Oh, you have a picture here. Okay, go ahead. No worries. Yeah, so as I was saying that organizations have been, contemplating moving to cloud over the years, and some of them have taken baby steps towards it, moving a little bit of application to cloud. And this led to setups which we now call as a multi-cloud setup. While it has been functional in many ways, but it has posed challenges to the IT teams to define how to secure the cloud and also for the organization to keep funding it. So the next speaker here brings with him about 2 decades of experience in the IT industry. Currently, he's working as a senior software architect at Calsoft. May I please invite Mr. Vinod Barole to come on the stage? Vinod? Let's give a round of applause, guys. I know you're all hungry. There's lunch after this, so the more energetic you are, the faster Vinod finishes.
Yeah, you know what's funny? Having your session just before lunch. So I see a lot of people sitting here. So whoever is sitting here, I request to please bear with me for next 15-20 minutes. Okay, I'll try to give you some stats around while I'm speaking so that you are aware of the kind of security threats that we are dealing with. Okay, so I'm actually working at Calsoft as a senior software architect, and I've been working with cloud for some time now. And I have seen cloud getting evolved over the years. I mean, people are adopting clouds like anything right now. And we have seen an era where cloud was adopted very initially when public clouds were out there and people were just the way AI is now getting boomed, similarly cloud was there back then. Right? Now it has become a new normal. People just deploy easily onto cloud, they build their applications on cloud. But what they have realized is going forward is that they are not satisfied with one cloud because of the cost and the nature of the different clouds, right? The flexibility, the scalability, and we have also seen some downtimes on some of the cloud providers going in the past few years. So organizations tend to actually try to shift to different cloud providers. They're trying to make sure they are highly available and available to their customers. So that's where I think the multi-cloud paradigm started beginning. And what we have seen is that what we have seen is that I was actually reading through some of these reports by Thales Group in 2023, and I've seen that around 39% of businesses have started moving to multi-cloud. And this is actually a significant rise of around 4% in the last year. And while I say that, it actually says that around 4 out of 10 businesses have actually adopted multi-cloud as the particular this thing. And while they are doing all that, they have seen a lot of security breaches, and this is a very concerning factor to me that some of these security breaches are even with some of the bigger organizations, where I have laid down some of these examples here. So if you see here is that Microsoft was hacked by an extortion group, and you will be surprised to know that the way the hack happened was it was within they actually compromised one of their employees' account, and they actually got hold of the Azure's DevOps server, where they got hold of the source code repositories for Bing Maps, and Cortana. So and this was merely just getting inside one of these employees' accounts. And another example is the Amazon, right? So in they termed that as a deployment error. So there was this Prime Video database that was hosted, and this database actually saves all the viewing history of any of the users, right? And this particular database was hacked, and the users actually got hold of 215 million records of the users' viewing history. Imagine if anybody got this history of this particular viewing history, what they can do with that. And one of the most interesting fact is that China, which generally people term them as like all the hackers come from there, but it happened that one of the biggest attack that happened in China was where one of the hackers actually stole 1 billion citizens' records from the Shanghai Police Department, and this particular data was stored into Alibaba Cloud. So what this tells us that, okay, this particular data that was present in Alibaba Cloud, one interesting fact that I would like to put here is that the database was secure, but the management console, through which you access the database, that was publicly open to the internet, and that's how they got the access. And these hackers actually extorted around $200,000 million as a ransom money for that. And another interesting in our hometown, India, is like the National Logistic Portal, where actually they store the information about the trade and some of the people who work on that platform. So that data was also compromised, and this data was stored into Amazon S3 bucket, and this was merely a misconfiguration. These are all the reports that the breaches that I've been telling here is basically latest information that I've got this. So if you see here, there are like all popular clouds, like Amazon, you have Alibaba, you have Azure, you have AWS cloud, right? So what does this tell us? And some of these companies are actually publicly listed. So if you look at the outside of this cyber attack that happens to these companies, they actually lose a lot of money into their stock prices, and the average decline is around 7.5% in the stock values, and in order to get back to the original value, it almost takes 46 days for any company to revive from that. So we can understand the level of attack and the level of information that is being taken out as from the security breaches. So moving on, what we would like to talk about is some of the common reasons for the security breaches, right? So we have seen the repercussions of these security breaches, but let's turn our attention towards some of these security breaches, details of those security breaches. If you look at the details are not very much useful to us unless and until we get into the root cause of why this happened, how this happened. We will not be able to figure out, and we will not be able to fortify our parameters in that way. So some of the explanation that comes along here is like misconfiguration, mismanagement. So there is a common perception, or the common question that anybody would ask is the cloud secure? Well, that's a very common thing that anybody would call, because there are big giants like Amazon, Alibaba, everybody is getting hacked, right? So anybody who's trying to adopt these cloud providers, it's a common question that they would ask. But what I would argue here is that instead of asking whether the cloud is secure, you should ask whether, are you using this cloud properly? Are you using it securely? That's what we need to ask, okay? And in the recent report, like I'm quoting Gartner here, is that what they have suggested is that by 2025, 90% of the organization that fail to control the public cloud, they will inappropriately share the sensitive data to the public. That can happen. And around 99% of cloud security breaches that can happen is going to be the customer's fault only, and not the cloud fault. And so this is where I think we need to explore some of these common reasons of security breaches, right? So first is misconfiguration. We've seen in the examples above, right? So, so misconfigurations are basically you're making errors in configuring your security and privacy configurations. And this is, it's very, you can say, unfortunate that to say that this is a very common trend that we are seeing nowadays, the way this kind of hacks happen. And even in the best IT teams in these companies are making such mistakes. We have seen examples for Amazon and Microsoft, right? So the solution lies here is in the automation. So here we need to make sure that a lot of automation happens, whatever security configuration that you do, it has to be through automation, and there's very less human intervention there. And this can be done through DevOps processes. We have seen in the last session, people talk about DevSecOps, right? So that's something that can be adopted here. Another important factor is lack of security expertise. So security is a topic, right? It's pretty advanced, right? I mean, you need to find people who know about security well-versed. I mean, there are people who tend to preach security at some point, but then this security market is kind of growing, right? I mean, there are a lot of tools and the kind of technology that we are evolving with AI and everything, right? So security becomes the foremost part here, and it is important that you hire talent who knows about the security very well, and organizations are finding it very difficult to find such people, and that's why the lack of security expertise comes into picture here. Another important factor is the lack of risk-related visibility. If you look out these cloud providers, right, they do not give you very low-level details of each of the stack where your particular workload is running. It is, and they give you some logging, some monitoring information, but then it may sometimes it may not be enough. And unless until you know the ghost, you cannot fight, right? So that's a pretty common thing. So, and when you're using multiple cloud providers, it's very difficult to manage all these monitoring stack from all these different, and it becomes a nightmare for any of the security teams here. Another aspect is, this is related to the development angle, insecure APIs, which we also termed as shadow APIs or zombie APIs. So these are APIs which development team actually build for maybe connecting between two applications together, and these are like used internally for some kind of a development work. But then when these APIs they get shadowed through the organization's API management service, then it becomes difficult for organizations to also track these APIs. So these APIs are outside, and it is prone for like a hack and all. Another example is insider threats. We have seen the example of Microsoft, right? One of the employees' account was compromised, and that's how they got access to Microsoft's source code. So this is like one of the difficult attacks that can be identified. These are peoples which are within the organizations, within the working as an employee or working as a contractor. So it's very important that the access management that you define to such people, it's very limited, and you need to make sure that who gets access for what purpose. So that needs to be defined. And some of the with all this, I think I've been reading to some of the reports where I found some examples related to unused access keys. So these are access keys which in Amazon, right, we create these access keys, and you kind of create those access keys and you forget about it. And there are a lot of such unused access keys which are out there, and we have seen people, some developers mostly, they're sharing these access keys via their source code, and the source code is pushed into GitHub repository and it's available for public use. Although Amazon is currently giving you those intimations via email, okay, your public access key has been publicly available, you need to, but then by that time your access key is still there and it is prone for usage, right? Another thing is MFA not enforced. So I've seen cases where you create an account, but then there is no multi-factor authentications enforced for that. So this is a very common thing which has been not done properly. And we create VMs on these cloud providers and we forget about, and it is open to the internet, like especially the SSH and the RDP access to these VMs. So what are the best practices that for us for securing these multi-cloud, right? So we have, in the previous session, we have heard about a lot of best practices. I will try to just extend on top of that and talk a bit around the cloud context here, right? So some of the pillars for robust, resilient security strategy is like risk management practice to support cloud decisions, right? Foremost, understand that there is no such thing as perfect security. I mean, there is always some or the other kind of law. You will never be able to secure everything, all your parameters. There will be, because cloud is something like there is no parameter to it. There is no perimeter to it, right? If you have to apply security within your data center, you know there's a perimeter around it. You can actually provide ingress, outgress through one of those things, right? But with cloud, that's not the case. The perimeter is very huge there. So it is important to understand that you need to devise a cloud security strategy that you need to say, okay, this is what I will support, this is what I will not support. It depends upon the budget that has been assigned to me as an organization, how much I can spend on security, right? So you need to define that. So that has to be the part of your planning as a risk management practice. Another is zero trust policy. So implementing zero trust policy is very crucial. I mean, there are three core principles for this zero trust policy. One is like you never trust, you always verify, and implement zero trust security for that. And some of the key pillars for that is like using identity access management, using network segmentation while deploying your applications, device endpoint security, and then application security and data security. So automate security with DevOps. We spoke about like we need to move away from configuring securities by humans, right? It has to be automated as much as possible so that it can be tracked. So introducing the processes around DevOps, DevSecOps is primary important for such organizations. So this will actually reduce a lot of misconfiguration with security configurations. Another is enforce MFA. This has to be something non-negotiable. You have to have MFA in any case. This can be authentication on top of a normal login. The MFA can be implemented. Another thing is securing data in transit and at rest. So we can use cloud services like Amazon KMS or Cloud HHM, like for some of the services for securing your data via transit and at rest. So as I wrap up our exploration to this multi-cloud and the security landscape, so as I said that multi-cloud is no longer a trend, it is a new normal. And around 81% of the organizations have immersed themselves into multi-cloud. So more companies are opting towards the multi-cloud architecture just because of the scalability and the flexibility. But then with these pros, there are also some cons, right? The attack surface increases. When I say the attack surface increases, there is a room for introducing more security related tools or security related practices. Right? So the reason why organizations want to go into multi-cloud is because they don't want to actually put all their eggs into one basket. They need to explore all the other clouds and get benefits from every cloud provider. So the global computing market is worth around estimated 545.8 billion, and it is growing at a CAGR of 17.9%. And this is going to go to 1.24 trillion by 2027. So the market is huge for any player that comes into this multi-cloud, this thing, right? And what is the market share for the cloud security aspect here? So it has been projected that it's going to grow at a CAGR of 15% by 2032, and it's 25 billion by 2032. And the reason why I say that is because people are now people know the kind of security problems that they deal with when they go into multi-cloud. And that's why most of the organizations are willing to pay extra for the security tools. So 48% are willing to pay extra for the data protections. This is by a recent report by 2023. So, so basically, in closing, this journey to multi-cloud security is dynamic one. It coexists with its own challenges, right? So, but then there is a scope for betterment here, and obviously for all the security companies who wants to build applications on top of that, there is a huge scope for them. So, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. Thank you.
Guys, keep it going, please.